Hey everyone, do you like having ready-to-cook meals shipped to you every week? Are you looking for an automated email newsletter service? How about flowers? Do you ever order those online? Do you ever find yourself in the mood to order some impossibly comfortable underwear? Well, have I got the product for you? Actually, I don't. The reason I don't is because we don't have those kinds of ads on this podcast. We've actually been offered some ad space, and I didn't take it. Why not? Because I like the show to be entirely 100% supported by listeners. It allows us to pay our bills, gives us free time to make all the podcasts, and it spares you guys from having to listen to dumb ads every 5 minutes where I'm selling some dumb product, reading dumb copy from some dumb company, and it's a product I've never actually used and I can't endorse. But anyway, if you enjoy the show and you want it to continue being ad-free, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/the Pensky File. Even $1 a month, it sounds like a cliche marketing garbage, but even $1 a month is really helpful on Patreon. And it all goes a long way to helping the show maintain its consistency and release schedule and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm aware that the irony of this is basically an ad, and I promise I'll do things like this only every once in a while. But still, if you go to patreon.com/the Pensky File, you can support the show. It's much appreciated. All right, on to it.
Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We're entering season 2 of DS9, and this one is the first episode of season 2. It's the first in a three episode arc called the Bajoran coup arc, I think is what the official name is. This one is called The Homecoming. It was the first episode of season 2, written by Ira Steven Behr. Story credit goes to Jerry Taylor and Ira Steven Behr. Directed by Weinrich Colby. It aired on September 26, 1993. In this episode, Kira rescues a Bajoran resistance hero from a Cardassian labor camp. An extremist group calls for all non-Bajorans to leave Bajor. It's called The Homecoming. We're joined by Clay. Clay, how are you?
Good. I haven't, I'm just getting back to DS9 for a while. So it's nice to see Quark's David Duchovny looking brother again.
Yeah, with the weird speech pattern. His name is Rom. We get a little bit of Rom. We get a little bit of Quark in this episode. We get a little bit of everybody because it's kind of the season kickoff. Everyone wants to get a little bit excited and get involved in these things. But this is the first of a 3-episode arc. We're going to be talking about The Homecoming, the first one and this one. And before we get to that, I just wanted to say that we have a survey up for feedback about the podcast, and if you enter it and you fill out all the things, you get a chance to win the complete DVD set for DS9. So if people haven't done that yet, click on the little link in the video description or the little podcast blurb. It'll bring you there. Fill out the survey. It's about 8 questions, and you can enter for a chance to win the DVD set.
And it's only DVD because they are never putting this out on Blu-ray.
No,
right?
Unfortunately. Apparently, it's a lot of work for this series for some reason to turn it into high definition. For the way that they mastered it or whatever originally makes it very difficult to actually remaster at this point.
Well, it's kind of a weird time, technology-wise. So
Sure.
I could see them screwing something up. Like I know people who have recorded things on certain kinds of video, and it's like, well, I can never put this on anything because the file, the formatting doesn't transfer to whatever the modern stuff is. So who knows?
Yeah, apparently I think it's something to do with the special effects in this, the way that they were composited into the film or something, so you can't lift them out very easily when you're re-editing and stuff, the way the TNG was. But anyway, we're going to get into The Homecoming. Fill out the survey, all that stuff. Me and Clay are going to be back right after this break.
My reputation even followed me into the labor camp, where my mere presence seemed to inspire my fellow prisoners. And I had done nothing but shoot an unarmed Cardassian in his underwear. I'll never forget the look on his face when he died. He was so embarrassed. So you see, Commander, I have done what Bajor needed me to do. I have allowed myself to be a slave to my reputation all of these years. And now, it is enough.
All right, Clay, so a little bit of feedback. Since we're starting Season 2, I'll give a little bit of Season 2 information. It aired concurrently with TNG's Season 7, which is interesting. Obviously the previous season aired with Season 6, which is one of TNG's best, and DS9 Season 1 was not particularly good. Michael Piller is still the showrunner. A little bit of trivia for people. This is the only season that the prophets do not actually appear on screen, which is interesting. So I'll fire it off to you with this, Clay. At the end of the season 1, Michael Piller, the showrunner, directed the writing staff to concentrate on the show's uniqueness for season 2 and to let go of any links to the universe of TNG. As such, the season's first episode, the writers chose to do a show which couldn't be done on TNG, an episode which was completely unique to the world of Deep Space Nine. So irrespective of any quality of the episode, which we're going to get into, do you think that they succeeded in that goal with this episode, this opening shot from them?
Well, I think so, because I don't think on TNG at any point Picard would have given his son advice on how to squirrel away with a woman.
I thought it was a bold move on Jake's part to just say, I'm going to bring her to the fucking suck program at Quark's Bar. That's a bold...
Well, what's great is Jake's like, I'm going to bring her back to my room. And he's like, you can't do that. All right, I'm going to bring her down to whatever the makeout spot is. No, you can't do that. Just say you're going to bring her upstairs. What? Okay, Dad.
Stand on the promenade. Yeah, that's a... We'll get into the Jake and Sisko relationship as it moves along, obviously. I have thoughts. I don't know if this episode... Well, this one kind of does, but maybe it'll probably wrap up that way with my thoughts on Jake and Sisko. But
but in all seriousness, I think I really like this episode. I feel like it's the kind of thing that they may have wanted to try to do a little bit in TNG, but never really went whole hog into. And I liked it because they managed to do a Prime Directive kind of story without explicitly using the Prime Directive, because it's not really applicable here. Yeah. Well, I guess later on we find out it kind of is. But no, it was a good, interesting ethical quandary for Sisko, which I was into, and I really like the idea of, what if your revolutionary figure doesn't want to be a revolutionary anymore, or maybe never was a revolutionary? I thought that was really interesting too.
It's unique that it's the very first 3-parter of a Star Trek series. They would do one.
Oh, they've never done 3-parters.
No series has done a 3-parter before this one. You could kind of consider Best of Both Worlds and Family to maybe be one, but it's not really the same story. It's just kind of a connected episode. Mm-hmm. But this is the first one where it's two to be continued in a row, one after the other. And I think that this episode reminded me a lot of ways, just on a technical aspect, of when we started TNG's season 3, right? The first episode of season 3 of TNG is not a great episode of the show by any stretch, but when you come in out of season 2 and you watch the first episode of season 3, it's almost like it's a totally different show. On some level, like everything looks different. The characters look different. The interactions are different. The scripts are different. The way the characters move and talk to each other. The filming is different. And I was really surprised by how different this episode of DS9 looked from the first season. It feels like everyone had a chance to sort of settle into what they're doing. Mm-hmm. This episode has a lot of character interactions that I don't feel they got anywhere near close to doing in the first season between people. Mm-hmm. And the actors all seem much more settled into the characters, where it feels like these people have worked with each other for a little bit of time and that they know each other. There's like a deeper relationship going on between everybody. And I don't know. I thought there was a big quality jump from season 1 to this one. Even, I won't say this episode is outstanding or anything. I think it's very, very solid. But I just, the technical aspects and the way that the show feels much more like DS9, and that was kind of my question going in about whether or not the show set itself apart from TNG. I feel like this is the show very much setting itself apart, and it's doing something where this kind of storytelling doesn't really work on TNG for a lot of different reasons. Like, they're building off of this existing Bajor thing. They're going with a sort of a Starfleet crew that is not directly always in contact with Starfleet. They're kind of on their own in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And the character interactions are people who, some people don't like each other. There's a little bit of tension between the characters. And I think everything comes together in Homecoming, which is this one. What'd you think? Do you have anything else to say about that?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think they're definitely leaning into the stuff that makes it Deep Space Nine versus the stuff that made TNG. Like, it didn't, this episode already doesn't feel like, today's episode is going to be about Sisko, and then the B episode is going to be about something wacky happening on, like, it all felt a lot more natural. Yeah. And it feels, the stuff they're dealing with is stuff that is explicitly Deep Space Nine stuff. they don't get into the prophets and stuff as much in this episode, but just the Bajoran characters and the Cardassian and the conflicts and all that stuff is more or less exclusive to DS9.
Yeah,
and I like that they're leaning on the stuff that they know that they can do well at this point.
Yep.
And yeah, I think everyone seems pretty comfortable. It feels a lot more like an ensemble cast where everybody's kind of getting a little bit to do, and none of it really feels out of place. The only thing that kind of felt, well, I guess it's not really out of place, but like the opening Odo and Quark scene almost feels a little out of place because the rest of it is so kind of everybody just sort of like works together to form the story. That scene pays off a little bit better in the next episode. But yeah, that one felt like it was a bit of a relic from the previous way of doing things, where it's like, here's the Quark and Odo scene that we do in every episode.
Yes.
But here they do at the beginning to kind of kick things off.
Yeah,
it did have a different feel overall. I liked it.
They kind of flip it in the Odo scene where it's Quark actually did something good for him, and I guess it's just kind of fleshing out the character of Quark will feed Odo a little bit. Like the relationship those two have is just kind of a back and forth, give and take between the two of them.
But then he blows it when he tries to Weinstein his way into Kira's room.
That's right. Yeah, he does. He does a very poor job of getting to that. A lot more. I don't think we've seen anybody's quarters in the first season, and we see a lot of people's quarters in these first couple episodes here. So that's like new sets and everything. That you had mentioned in Emissary, you weren't particularly impressed with the sort of production design of things. You thought it was kind of bland.
Yeah.
I feel like they're adding places like hallways and quarters, and the lighting on the station is totally different from TNG, and everything's very dark on DS9.
Yeah. What I have started to notice, I assume this is intentional, is that they give certain elements that they come back to a lot a very specific look, so you kind of know immediately where they are, even if you don't entirely know where it is in relationship to anything else. So, like the one that pops out right away is that gigantic, like, red cog-looking door that is the place everybody comes in through.
Oh yeah, it's like the boarding door. It's where the ship's dock. Yeah,
it's a very unique looking door. Like it doesn't feel like a normal Star Trek door.
Yeah, right.
So anytime I see that, I don't know where that is on the space station. I have no idea where it is on the space station. But as soon as I see that, I know where they are.
Yep.
And the same with Sisko's room too. He's got a very kind of weird, like, golden door. Yep. Kind of thing, which is very unique. And so, it's easy to, it's just things that your brain kind of picks up on to place you into different rooms, which I think is a smart call because there is so much stuff going on.
Yeah,
on
and
set.
I think a lot of it is it's obviously all Cardassian architecture, right? Like when they transport in this series, it's with the Cardassian transporter effect. Mm-hmm. And Sisko's
oh, really? I actually don't know if I ever thought about that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a yellowy different color. And when Sisko's office is laid out I think they've mentioned this, in the traditional gull Cardassian architecture, where the person in command hovers above everyone else and looks down at the underlings. His office is like perched above things. I like Sisko's office, though. It's there's a lot of good ways to shoot in that room because it's very big. It's different from the Ready Room, which Picard's Ready Room basically had like the two angles you could look at if you were filming in it. Mm-hmm. And this one feels a little better. So we'll talk about Homecoming, the episode, which is basically, the main backbone of this one is the character of Lee Nollis, right? It's his sort of this Bajoran war hero who was captured and his redemption or non-redemption by the end of it. And then he'll feed into episode 2, which is The Circle. So I guess... Great
episode for guest stars too, because he's good. That's, Ben Horn from Twin Peaks.
Yep.
And also surprise appearance by Frank Langella, which I was very excited about. That guy's the man. Love that guy.
Langella is. I didn't really recognize him when I was watching this, but he was, in my opinion, he was clearly the best of the guest actors that they had.
Oh yeah.
And he's apparently Academy Award nominated and everything. He's been in a bunch of movies and film and theater and everything.
He played Skeletor in Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, that's right.
And he was the best part of that movie.
He was nominated for Best Actor in Frost Nixon. He played Richard Nixon in that movie.
Great version of Dracula with him from 1982.
Yep, that's right. And we have Ben Horn. I forget the actor's name. It's like Richard Leyland or something like that. Mm-hmm. He plays Lee Nollis. So we're introduced to a bunch of Bajoran folks. We're introduced to, we still have the Vedics in the background and everything. And so I guess we'll talk about Lee Nollis here. So his whole general point is that he was a war hero who got captured by the Cardassians, and through some sort of Deus Ex Machina, Quark gets an earring that reveals that he is alive and well on this prison planet that the Cardassians have. So Kira and O'Brien get to go and rescue him, and they rescue a whole bunch of Bajorans from that camp. And then they bring him back, and he's a little reticent. He seems a little bit unsure of his role. He doesn't seem to match the description of this war hero that the Bajorans have been talking about. And then it's revealed that he is a sort of accidental hero. He's just kind of a soldier who, through a sort of lucky accident, a legend grew out of his actions, and he became a sort of bigger-than-life figure for the Bajorans. What'd you think of Lee Nollis, and what'd you think of his storyline?
Well, until I really registered what his name was, I wrote him down in my notes as Vedic Mandela, which I figured described him well enough I could remember it.
When's the apartheid coming into this storyline?
No, I thought his story was good. I liked what they were doing with him because the way that they play him at the beginning, when you actually start to see him, he plays off the stories of his exploits. It seems like he's just trying to be modest, or
he's like shell-shocked by the war, kind of, and he doesn't want to.
Yeah, the doctor is talking about, and he's like, well, this wasn't so great for it. Being the realist about the legend and all that kind of stuff. And when they give you that twist that he's just in that position by dumb luck, I thought that was good. Yeah, and I like I said before, I like the idea of, what if your revolutionary hero doesn't want to be a revolutionary anymore? Like, what do you do? And they get into another interesting conversation at the end with him and Cisco about,
the Batman
legends.
Conversation.
Yeah, basically, yeah, the Dark Knight conversation, and it's and it brings up an interesting concept of does the truth outweigh the legend? Like if he did come clean and explain everything, like, would that be enough to destroy his name? You know what I mean?
Right.
Or is the legend strong enough that people would just kind of ignore that? Or would he come out with the truth and then, just turn into a pariah? So
would it not change anything is the other option.
Yeah. It brings up a lot of interesting questions as far as that goes. And I like that stuff. I've said a million times, I like the bigger ideas and the thought experiments and stuff on these shows, and so I appreciated that.
Yeah, I think that he's interesting to me. I think that it's that's feedback actually, is that I say interesting too much. So it is fascinating.
I say it a lot too.
So the thing about Nollis is that I like the idea of what they're going with, and I like the whole Batman aspect of, Bajor doesn't need a man, what they need is a symbol at this point. Mm-hmm. I think it works in and of the Bajoran conflict, and that it's something that the Bajorans actually would kind of cling to, and the irrationality of it almost doesn't make sense to me. I like the story that he tells about him. He just kind of falls down a hill and then stumbles into like a Cardassian who's taking a bath, and he shoots him, and that's how the story comes about. But I sort of on a realistic, and let me know if I think I just need to ignore it and go with the metaphor more than what actually happens. I find it a little difficult that the legend took off to the extent that it did. He's not. It's not like he's a otherwise great general who also has these sort of tall tales that surround him. He really doesn't give you the impression that he's particularly good at what he was doing. So it's a little bit odd to me that even despite the fact that he's trying to deny this is happening, the legend sort of catches on like wildfire, and maybe that just has to do with the desperation of the Bajorans at that point. But what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess when you think about it, like, we don't really get any other, as far as I can remember, we don't really get any other indication that he was like a great warrior, right?
No, they just kind of speak of him as a very sort of important leader of the resistance, kind of.
Yeah. I don't know. I can get with it for the story.
Yeah.
It's maybe realistically it wouldn't have exploded as large as it did. But I don't know.
I think it's
Maybe
the
it
right.
would. I mean, let's put it this way: the guy who started the First World War, who killed Franz Ferdinand,
did
it completely by accident, pretty much.
Yeah, that's true.
And that guy has a monument to him in I forget where it is, like Slovakia or something like that. I can't remember where he's from. So that stuff. Those sorts of stories. It's like the game of telephone on a global scale. I can understand it blowing up much, much larger than that did. What I can't get with is, as much as I like the Batman conversation, I don't entirely believe that Cisco would give him that advice.
Oh, why is that?
I don't know. It just...
I find it to be a very Cisco approach to things, actually.
Okay, maybe it is. Maybe I just don't know him well enough yet. But it just, I don't know. It seems like he's so conflicted about getting involved that, recommending that this guy go against his better judgment on things for the sake of a revolution or something. I don't know. I don't know how it felt more to me like that was the conversation they wanted them to have for a writer's sake.
Yeah, sure.
Than realistically. Like, realistically in that situation, I don't know if a commander of a Starfleet space station would do. I don't know. Who knows?
See, I think that if it was a Picard story, right, Picard would go the other way, and it would be sort of like it's up to Lee Nollis what he wants to do. I think what the show does pretty well here is lays out the fact that Cisco also needs him to be in this role for like the good of what the situation is on the ground. And Cisco to me strikes me as more of a commander or captain who's willing to... He has a wider moral value set than the other captains do at this point. Like he's much more willing to... He admits to Kira that like the Federation needs Bajor to be consolidated as well. Like what the splitting and splintering of stuff that's going on the planet is no good for anybody.
Right.
And I think maybe my concern would be that Cisco plays it maybe a little bit too earnestly when I do think that there's this underlying selfish need that he has for Lee Nollis to step into this role, and maybe they could have pushed that a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do, I do like the conflict that he has about whether or not to basically kind of let Kira save him and put their thumb on the scale, and he thinks about the larger implication. That stuff is really good. So I guess I didn't think about it as much. I guess maybe I should give the writing of the character a bit more credit then, because that seems like a decision that he would make that sounds good to Lee Nollis, but does have a bit of an underlying selfishness for Cisco. So maybe I'm wrong on that one.
And I think we're not talking about it yet, but I think it ties into his approach to the end of the Circle, where we'll get to that. But I think that the episodes, his decisions kind of mirror each other and what he goes on in that episode.
Those guys are creepy as hell, man.
No, with the masks. Yeah, we'll get to the Circle, but we were introduced to the
Bajorans.
Yeah, we're introduced to the Circle in this. I like the scene where they're introduced, where O'Brien shows them the spray painted logo that they've been spraying around everywhere.
Yeah,
and Odo, it's just a really nice scene that you can tell the directors clearly had a little time to think about. It's Odo, Cisco, and O'Brien are looking at it. And then Odo kind of breaks off and gets into the forefront of the camera shot, and he's looking around suspiciously, like he's looking for what might be going on down there. They have a great conversation that I think really splits out those characters well. Cisco sort of takes command of the thing. Odo's very pleased to add more security. That's always kind of an Odo trait. Odo is kind of an authoritarian in that way. Mm-hmm. And then O'Brien is just kind of there, and then they all walk off. I thought it was a very effective scene at identifying all the characters and identifying the plot and working, meshing those two things together pretty well.
Yeah, I would agree. And this episode was the highlight for me was Undercover O'Brien, which I think should be a
Pimp O'Brien.
I think should be a spin-off.
Yeah.
Because his although I have to say, based on his costuming, it looks like I can only assume Bajor is full of extras from season 3 of Miami Vice.
Oh, I think of the Bajoran outfits kind of remind me of the circus guys who have the monkey with the jukebox, kind of like the colored vest. That's kind of what they all remind me of. That's actually That's probably my low point of the episode is their actual rescue on the planet.
When it turns into Rambo 2.
Yeah, and I think even before that is worse when they just kind of walk up to the prison camp.
Yeah, that didn't make a ton of sense. The number of guards they had there, and the fact that they just walk right up to the gate and they're like, "Hey, here's a sexy lady." Like that whole thing was just it didn't feel very
right.
The
Cardassian guards aren't like halt, at immediately seeing somebody. They're like, "Hey, what's going on? What do you got there? Like, what are you doing?"
I did like the idea, like the concept of. I mean, again, it's basically the plot of Rambo 2, where which I'm sure they specifically ripped off for this. Where Kira gets the earring, and it seems like they have a prisoner, but it turns out they have an entire work camp full of prisoners where they're not supposed to, and it implies that Cardassians are still involved in this. Like, I like that stuff. I like and I also like the way that resolved too. Where I was expecting, okay, so they find all these prisoners, and how are the Cardassians going to respond to that? They're kind of caught red-handed, and they're just, they've already apologized by the time she gets back to the ship, and that's just sort of it. I like that. I thought that was kind of refreshing. It's a refreshing way to handle that.
It's the appearance of Gul Dukat again. Dukat continues to return to the series. He's obviously important. He'll be important going forward. What's your take on the Cardassians at this point? Like, in terms of their uniqueness, or maybe not uniqueness, like, what's your general sense of them in terms of the Trek series, all of them put together?
They feel like original series Klingons, kind of.
Okay.
In that, so far, I feel like they've been, they feel like the kind of race that they're working with, but are also kind of being underhanded. Maybe they're not as mischievous as the original series Klingons are.
Yeah.
But they have that same sort of like, smile while they're stabbing you in the back kind of feel to them.
Yeah.
Which I guess, I don't know, I guess the Klingons always kind of have that, but I don't know. They feel different from the Klingons, but it feels like they still have that same kind of space communist, basically.
Yeah, I think the original series Klingons have a little bit more of like a lightheartedness to it, where the DS9 Cardassians are more underhanded in a sort of malevolent way.
Yes.
And obviously through the Dukat conversation, the way that they approach the Cardassians, in my opinion, is different in that the Cardassians are some of the more complicated written characters because they never tell you the truth, really. Like, they're always lying. And the Klingons didn't have that. The Klingons would actually tell you the truth if you caught them in things. Right. The Cardassians don't do that. So it's very difficult to get the truth out of anything that the Cardassians tell you. I think that they're very similar, like you say, to the TOS Klingons in that they're very broad, and the show doesn't really want to pigeonhole them, and it wants to continue to expand them into different things. Like they do a whole bunch of stuff. They're not just like the Klingon fight for honor type. They are imperialists, they're slavers, they're terrible people. They're also super civilized in some points. Like they speak like they're sort of intelligent in their conversation. They're clever, everything like that. They're a very broad antagonist, I guess would be the way to describe it. They can fit a lot of molds.
Yeah, which I appreciate, because usually the antagonists on these shows they kind of have the thing that they do, and then that's the only thing they do every time you see them.
Yes, yeah.
I'm looking at you, Ferengi.
Or the Romulans are the ones that
or
pop
the Romulans, yeah. But yeah, they've gone out of their way to make the Cardassians a very adaptable for the situation villain, and by doing that, they make them much more interesting and well-rounded as a part of the show and as characters.
Yeah. I think.
Like I don't think you could really get something like you got out of what's his name, Harris Yulin's character.
Oh, Maritza.
Yeah. I don't know how easy it would be to get that out of a lot of the other races, because the Cardassians do have so much backstory, and regarding the Bajorans and the other stuff that they've done, and it allows a lot of good different things to happen with them.
Yes. They're not as much of a, I guess the hot term would be like they're not as much of a monoculture as the other races are perceived to be. There's a little bit of variance, and you actually haven't watched an episode with Garrick yet, which will be coming up soon. But Garrick is another Cardassian on the station who's interesting. Let's see here. I think I don't really. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about Homecoming? I mean, I think it's mostly the setup for Lee Nollis. We get a little bit of the Bajoran stuff, but that gets fleshed out in the next episode. We meet the Circle. We've gone through that. Quark gets branded in this episode. I guess we'll talk about the Ferengi. I had complained in the first season that the Ferengi didn't really. They claim to be capitalists, but they aren't really capitalists as much as like Wheeler and Dealers. This one, they kind of touch on the means of production thing a little bit, where Quark takes 7 times the amount of stuff that his brother gets, and his brother claims it's not fair. Maybe it's a little bit on the nose, but I think it's a way that they've portrayed the Ferengi that they've never actually done that before, and I think that it's nice that it's different from the stuff that they did earlier.
Yeah, and I like the way that they've been playing Quark in these 2 episodes, where he's still a Ferengi, he's still, kind of sleazy, but he is also doing good stuff.
Right.
But
even if he's being forced to, he kind of will do good stuff, yeah.
But he's also definitely still doing it for his own gain.
Yeah.
So I like that. Those characters are interesting to me. I will say I didn't like the cold open of this episode. I thought the beginning and the ending I thought were pretty weak.
Okay. The cold open ends with the Quark getting the earring, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think it ends.
Oh, he gives it to Kira. He gives it to Kira.
Yeah. It was one of those things where it's like it wasn't enough of a hook for a cold open to me.
Okay.
Because she doesn't really give you any indication of what that thing is. She just kind of takes it and like runs out of the room.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was more enchanted by the technical changes more than anything. Like I was like, wow, the show feels different going into this one, just in the way that people are playing. But I agree that it's not a good enough thing. It's not even clear in the earring. They have to sort of tell you it's a Bajoran earring, which I don't really realize.
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked that up at all unless they had mentioned it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's to my own detriment because I haven't been watching all the episodes. But if you didn't either, then
I didn't
clearly
either.
It's not.
Yeah, it's someone has to just obviously come out and say that this is what this thing is. Yeah, and you didn't like the ending. So I assume you're talking about when Minister Jarrow, who is the Frank Langella, comes in. Is that what you consider the ending, or are you going before that?
Yeah, that part. Yeah, it just, I don't know. For a to be continued, it didn't really have that much of a sting for me.
Yes.
I'm not saying like the screen needs to go black and a gunshot has to go off or something, but it just, I don't know, it semed a little bit dull to end on.
It's always the problem, and we'll talk about it in the next episode. She's a recurring cast member. There's no, they're not going to get rid of her. If she's gone for one episode and she'll be back. So I think they do a better job of paying off that, but it's not a great announcement except for the fact that it kind of exposes, I think it's the first time we get to a sense that Jarrow is not up to any good here.
Yeah. Those sorts of cliffhangers remind me of, there's an episode of The Simpsons where they go to see Phantom Menace, and it's just 2.5 hours of trade talks. And the cliffhanger for the end of the movie is Yoda saying like, well, I guess that concludes our discussion of the adjusted trade routes.
Right.
Or does it? And then they cut to the end. And like that's anytime they have an ending like that, that's what I think of, where it's like they're ending on something that it feels like it should be a big deal, but it doesn't really land.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just, especially compared to the next one, I think the next one ends on a much better note.
So lastly, what'd you think of the, there's a lot of guest stars in this one. What'd you think of the performances? I liked Lee Nollis. I thought, Jarrow was good. Langella was great. And we don't run into Vedic Wynn yet at this point. So I'll just say, I'll go off those 2 people. Would you kind of agree with that? Or you sounded positive about Lee Nollis?
I thought he was a little stiff, but I guess that character kind of warrants being a little stiff. I guess I liked him more before he gets kind of ironed out, like after they like up through when they capture him and up when he has the scene in the sick bay I really liked, but then after that he gets a little bit I guess wistfully aloof is a good way to say. Yeah. Where he's always like he's constantly just seems like he's just looking off screen kind of thing, which is fine. But because the character is kind of a weird. If I was that character, I would be stiff too, because I wouldn't want to address people and people think that I'm this sort of savior.
Yeah, so he gets a new title and he has the line. He's like, "What am I even supposed to do?" When he's talking to Kira there, and it's like it's a weird thing. I want to talk more about him in the second episode because I think the second episode fleshes him out a little bit more. But yeah, I'm done with this one. Do you have anything else you want to talk about Homecoming?
No, I don't think so. That pretty much covers everything. All right, Frank Langella's great.
Yes, yeah, can't be said enough. Well, we're going to take a break. We'll come back and we'll read off the patron thoughts.
They still need you. But I am not the man that they think I am.
Perhaps not. But Bajor doesn't need a man. He needs a symbol. And that's what you are. No one's asking you to lead troops into battle or to kill 100 Cardassians with your bare hands. I saw you in front of the crowd on the promenade. They look at you and they see strength and honor and decency. They look at you and see the best in themselves.
But it's all based on a lie.
No, it's based on a legend.
All right, everybody. So if you support the show on patreon.com/thepenskyfile, if you give a couple dollars a month or even $1, I think you can post on the post that I put up there. Let us know your thoughts about upcoming episodes and they'll get read on the show. We'll start off with Holly McLaughlin. It says, The Homecoming. Love Kira and O'Brien's dynamic on the rescue trip. They have a really nice chemistry and make an effective team. The highlight is Lenalla's scene confessing to the emissary, which is Cisco, that his big, brave act was mythic, and it worked really well, and it rang true on a story level, both for the episode and the overall arc of Bajor's recovery. We kind of covered that. I think I would slightly disagree with just how true his characterization, like how far the legend would actually spread, would be my only concern about that point. Zam Nuclear Wessel writes, Homecoming. Always great to see Ben Horn, Lenallis from Twin Peaks, although as time goes on, Gul Dukat sort of becomes a Ben Horn in space. Do you want to... which Horn is in the original series of Twin Peaks, right?
Yes.
What's his characterization? He's just kind of a sleazy...
Yeah, he's he owns a hotel with Laura. I believe Laura Palmer's father is his partner, if I remember correctly. And
okay.
He's the father of one of Laura Palmer's friends, and he, as the series goes on, he turns out to be this sleazy guy who, well, spoilers, I guess, for a 30-year-old TV show. He turns out to be running like this prostitution ring out of the local gambling hall and all that kind of stuff. And
gotcha.
Yeah, he's just, he's got a penchant for younger girls and stuff. So he's just kind of a sleazebag.
Maybe that's the, is that the prostitution callback here? Is that a callback to Twin Peaks with Kira? No.
I don't know what you're talking about.
With when Kira pretends to be a prostitute when she breaks into the prison camp.
I don't think so, unless, if she was dressed up like a suit of cards, then maybe.
Okay.
Because the prostitutes at the place in Twin Peaks have a card theme.
Gotcha. Zam Nuclear Wessel continues, everything works nicely here, although I try to forget the number of times that Kira pretends to be a prostitute during the course of the series.
I mean, hey, maybe she's just really, that's the one thing she's convincing at.
Yeah.
I mean, she says in the next episode she's not really an art person, so maybe she's got the one character she plays really well.
Yeah, she's she's got that role down.
Although even as a prostitute, she's just like a ball buster. Like
yeah.
she's not playing like a ditzy, she's not playing a prostitute. She's just basically playing Kira if Kira was a prostitute.
Right, exactly. It's the kind of attitude I think that some Johns might not appreciate, and you don't know which one of them are willing to sort of smack you around a little bit. Not a defense of that, but it is basically she's just Kira playing a prostitute.
What actually would be great is if every time she played a prostitute was dealing with a different race, but she knew what kind of prostitute that race liked.
Sure. She's like the Troy of prostitution or something like that.
Yeah, so she like, that's like, you know, she seems very studious, so I'm sure the first time she played a prostitute undercover, she did a lot of research. So she probably could tell you what kind of prostitutes Cardassians like, what kind of prostitutes Ferengi. I mean, hey, Quark seems to be into her, so something seems to be working, right? Yeah. Although he seems to be into everybody, so.
Yeah, he's into females.
Quark is like that character in the early John Hughes movies who's just like the weird, creepy friend who's just trying to, you know, look up girls' skirts, basically.
Yep, he's got mirrors on his shoes and all that stuff. Joint Mango says, The Homecoming, better than The Childs and The 37s. I'd agree with that. Those are other Season 2 opening episodes. Kyle Barrett writes, The Homecoming. The episode gets off to a slow start, but once Kira and O'Brien leave on their mission, the pace picks up. Having an away mission is a nice change of pace for DS9, the location being a welcome diversion from the same old sets every episode. I wish they chose another way of deception rather than Kira posing as a prostitute. It gave me unwelcome flashbacks to Uhura's striptease in Star Trek V, but I admit O'Brien makes up for it by being a great pimp. The second half is where the episode really picks up, however, with the expansion of the politics being a welcome addition. Frank Langella is a good pull for the show, but I'm more interested in Twin Peaks actor Richard Bamer, there's his name, who puts in an understated performance as Lee Nollis, his recounting of his true past being the highlight of the episode.
Also played Tony in West Side Story.
Yes. Why do I know that? There was some... Oh, I think that's a reference that someone makes, maybe. Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay, Stephen Cobb says, The Homecoming. Poor Tony. Guess the dance fighting against the Sharks did a little to prepare Nollis for fighting the Cardassians. Some very good acting from both Lee Nollis and Minister Jarrow. The episode's use of "you had better come down here" trope is pretty blatant.
I will say, in defense of the Kira as a prostitute thing, clearly it seems to be a running thing they do, but this is the first time I've come across it.
Yes.
You know, when I said before that this episode ended up being kind of like Rambo 2, it's kind of similar in that, like, in this situation, what else are you really going to do? You know, like bringing a prostitute to the leader of the prison camp is more believable than if they were like, "We're here to check the gas meter."
Right, we're the three. We're the three wise men with like myrrh and frankincense and stuff. Like, you have to kind of bring in something.
How else are you gonna sneak a girl into a prison camp?
Yeah, I
don't
want to be too knee jerky about the like. I don't think it's actually a bad situation, really. Like, it makes sense to me that that's what they do. Going forward, things might change, but I think that it makes sense here on a, you know, you don't even need the exposition of, you know, Kira could explain the plan of this was the way that the Resistance used to manipulate Cardassian guards or something. Like, you could kind of flesh it out if you wanted to, but I don't actually find it to be that big of a deal.
It's just a weirder scene for me because they just regular clothes just walk up to the gate.
Yeah, right. Matthew Ross says, on the Homecoming arc of episodes, first it always surprises me how much of Babylon 5 and DS9 stole from each other. Have you ever seen Babylon 5?
I have not. Sean Cordy talks about it like it's the holy grail of television.
Yes, I've never seen it either, and Sean would be my only insight into it. I recall when I was at a party in LA and hearing the banter between Mojo debating Mike Okuda over whom stole whom's worker bees and drones. If you look carefully, the ships are interchangeable. Case in point, the circle with its branding with Bajor first is almost exactly like the Earth movement, the Home Guard. I assume this is all Babylon 5 stuff, so I can't even comment, even down to their symbols. I could go even into the moving of the station in DS9 to B5 doing the same thing in its opening episode. But anyway, getting to the Homecoming arc, this was, to me, well done. The characters have some depth now. Even Bashir is not annoying and competent. Would you agree with that, Clay?
Yeah, he was fine.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of scenes, but I think he's okay in this.
Yeah, he's not. I didn't see him much in the episodes I saw before, but he seemed to be kind of bumbling a little bit more.
Yeah,
and he seems to be less so in this one. I mean, he's only in it briefly, but
he transports out and he saves the guy's life, which is good enough for me. The political intrigue and the mysticism, along with the, I guess, sexual desires of Kira, seem to all be intertwined, but intertwined well. The rise and fall of the Bajoran democracy. Or the Weimar Republic. The biggest issue with the extra who is front and center when Lee Nollis is at the Replimat. I don't remember that scene.
Is that possibly in the third episode?
No, that must be before he gives the speech to the crowd.
No. Oh, I know. Yeah, when he's bringing him through and telling him that the replicator makes good food or whatever.
Right. Oh, okay. That makes sense. I don't remember anything popping out at me there. But Frank Langella is always at his best, sleaziest. In Cisco, Brooks' portrayal of the clear understanding of the politics only shows how he is perfect for the position. It was a good start to showing why the series is distinctly different from previous Star Treks.
Frank Langella has this weird condition that his eyes twitch uncontrollably. Well, I mean, he can control it, but it's something he has to focus on.
Sure.
And if you ever watch the version of Dracula he did, he uses that as an effect as Dracula. It's fucking creepy.
Interesting.
So like he's delivering like this, operatic Dracula dialogue while his eyes are just like vibrating back and forth. It's really cool.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, he's definitely a great actor, and it'll be good to talk about him in the next episode. But that's it, guys. Thank you very much for feedback. Clay, what are you going to give this one on our 1 to 5 scale? We actually forgot to give a rating for In the Hands of the Prophets, the last episode. I gave it a 3. I don't know if you remember what you gave it, but
sure.
Yeah, he'll give it a 3.
What the hell happened in that episode?
That was where we meet Vedic Wynn, the assassination attempt to the basketball.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would give that a 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, I think I would give this one a 4.
Yes. I'd give it a weak 4, I think, if in all things considered. But I think it's a... I was happy with this episode. I thought it was pretty good. Did you have any... You've already kind of talked about it, but yeah, if you give it a 4, sort of what's the basis there beyond being just kind of solid? You thought it did something a little bit different for you?
Yeah, I thought it was, it brought up a lot of interesting questions, and, I thought it worked well. I thought the plot was good. I just thought it was a solid episode. I thought it was, based on the episodes I've seen, it was on the better end.
Yes, yeah, I'd agree with that. I'll give it a 4 as well. It's kind of a weak 4, but I do like the episode. I think it's a pretty good season opener and everything like that. So, thank you very much, guys, for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. You can do all the things on YouTube and Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Follow us on Facebook, etc., etc. Rate us on iTunes. All that stuff is very much appreciated. You can also go to patreon.com/the Pensky File. A couple $1 a month, you get extra content, you get extra podcasts. You also help support the show. And as always, our highest tier of supporters get listed out at the very end of every episode. Stephen Cobb, Holly McLaughlin, Jay Stanley, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Magpie Nest Productions, Ben Douglas, Tax Owlbear, Kyle Barrett, Joint Mango, Vincent Adultman, Tark Latif, Rune Vendler. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. Much appreciated. We'll be back with The Circle coming up next. Is that it, Clay? Do you have anything you want to say? Any plugs, anything?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, we're done. I guess that's it for the homecoming, but we'll be back with The Circle in a couple days. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.